Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Great.
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Yeah, actually quite good. Well, still suffering from trauma, but every day's a new joy. But any news for us? Anything interesting?
Not really.
I've got a story, and it's a little bit along the lines of, I think there's a fine line between first world problems and minor true crime. We have had an issue with our ensuite where the tiles started cracking, and we got logged a insurance claim, and the assessor came out and had a look at it, and he was supposedly able to detect whether there was any water leaks in the walls, and he said, no, there's no water leaks in the walls. It's because you haven't maintained the silicone in the shower, and so the shower's leaking.
It's your
fault.
That's
caused all of this. So we go, oh, whatever. So then we get a builder out, and he started this week, and he's doing a great job. But I spoke to him yesterday, and he goes, there's a joint in the plumbing that's dripping. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, it's dripping. So that's what's caused all of the water. I'm like, so do you think this is due to this work we're getting done is due to the silicone leaking or to the dripping in the tap? He goes, 100% it's the leak that in the wall that's caused it all. You can see where it's all gone. So I reckon old mate assessor was searching for drips in the wall using a stick, like the water diviners do.
Divining rod, is it?
Divining rod, yeah. Had no idea. And so now apparently he's coming back to have another look at the work, even
to have no idea. Well, his sticks won't work because you fixed the leak, haven't you?
That's right, yeah. Or it's going to go off like a frog in a sock because there's going to be water everywhere because the joists in the floor are still wet and all this sort of stuff. But anyway,
I don't understand insurance for things like that. So why would that be insured but the silicone isn't?
Because the silicone is something we should maintain. It's not
structural.
A repair. Yeah. So there's nothing we should have been able to manage that, whereas something we can't see that has happened, over time. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. But so the point of that was, first world problem versus minor true crime. And I think a minor true crime has occurred. And I'm just going to go straight to sentencing. And so, Swanee, I'm wondering if you could just organise a couple of bag of dicks for dogs to send over to the insurance company.
I have a couple set aside in promotional opportunities just like this.
From our merchandise store.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
My store of
bag
of dicks for dogs.
It's got a name. We talked about it, yeah.
Can I borrow someone's TikTok and I might go and hand deliver them and we'll do a little TikTok video as well?
Borrow someone's TikTok.
And get a bag of dicks for dogs and you get a bag of dicks for dogs.
Goodness me. And what about you, Swanee? Any news?
I think I do. No.
Okay.
No, I never do. It's a dull old existence, isn't it?
Well, look.
It's a dull old existence.
If you're not having a massive trauma,
yes,
that's got to be a
sometimes
good thing.
No news is good news. I'll take it at that.
Yes. I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are...
Trial by
Wine.
And what are we drinking?
Well, I know it is our special 200th episode.
It is. Wow.
So I've gone for an old style deck.
Wow. A Diet Coke.
I know, right?
Old style.
That's impressive.
Rolling the boat out.
Harking back to some of those earlier episodes, and I was always several cans of DC in.
You lush.
Don't know my limit. Yeah. What about you guys? What are you on?
I feel like we've forgotten our anniversary.
You might have.
Didn't come to party, so...
What have you got?
We've just got soda water and ginger refresher.
Okay.
Well, that's crap.
Is that after your weekend celebrating Woo? Was there lots of wine? Yeah.
There was a few wines. Yeah.
Well, if you feel the need to do better at any time, just let me know.
Just lift your game. What are you doing?
I am going to enjoy a bottle
of
champagne. And so this
bottle.
I've already given Tony one glass. That's his allowance. But it's a bottle of Louis Bouillot, maybe. I don't know how to say it. It is a Cremant de Bourgogne, and it's a rosé.
I think you nailed that.
Yeah.
Probably not. Bourgogne?
Your
How would you say it?
can't really see it.
Oh, I
but
can't really say it.
Cremont.
Swanee would say it properly.
Or Bourgogne? Yeah, maybe. Bourgogne.
Turns out I did nail it.
I was looking at the
Anyway.
other word underneath and I thought, where did she get
Yeah,
Bourg
that's
from?
what I saw at first. I was
Louis
like, oh.
Boulot. Boulot? What would you say?
No,
Boulot?
I go Bulot. I think you'd
Boulot
pronounce
with
the
the
T.
T. No,
Because
no.
there's no
I
E
don't
after
speak
it.
French. Je
That's
suis
right.
désolée, je ne parle français.
Oh, you're pretty
Je ne
good.
parle pas français.
Neither do
Anyway.
I at all.
Right. So I'm drinking that in celebration of Kipling being back. And, of course, happy
Yes.
anniversary, 200 years.
200
years.
200 years.
Episodes. It's like
Cheers.
200 years,
200
but
years.
it's 200 episodes. Congratulations.
Oh, they said
All
we'd
right.
never make it.
I know, and they were wrong.
They were wrong.
I don't know who they were, but they were wrong.
I tell you what, if there's anyone who is listening to this episode who has listened to all 200,
Some
let
people
us
have, I
know.
think. Yeah.
They
Then we'll
have
get you on
not.
as a guest
There
listener.
cannot be one person
I think.
who you'd have to know them by name, for God's
Oh,
sake.
of course I do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm talking about friends because people message me. I got, the
Really?
poo guy. Yeah, the guy I was talking about with the fecal matters and then the follow up to it.
Mm.
He
Was there a
sent me a
couple
note.
with him though? Oh, hang on. So with fecal matters, it was more than one story, wasn't it? Is that what you mean? Or the person who suggested you do it? I'm confused.
No, well, he inspired it with the story of
Yes.
someone had pooed in his backyard.
Got it. Now I remember. Yes.
Yeah, and anyway, he messaged me just the other day asking if we'd done a certain story, and I said, "Oh no, not yet, but I have been thinking about it." And he said that he spent a lot of time recently going up to Bendigo because his father's been unwell, so he's been taking him to hospital and appointments and stuff. And he said we spend half the time, pissing ourselves laughing or sick to our stomachs. I just said, "Oh, I'm glad we could lighten things for you." I didn't mention the sick to your stomachs bit. I thought, "Oh, I don't want to comment on that."
I hope the dad's got more of a palate for
Unlikely.
it than Bernadette.
That's
apparently
right.
he laughs, yes.
Because
no,
I
no.
wouldn't want someone who wasn't in great health to be having to listen to that if they were not
It's a lot.
handling
My mother, goodness. Now, there's a person who said we'd never make it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
rest
go
Yeah,
on.
her
that's right.
soul.
Rest in peace. Yes.
Hey, Swanee, if someone has listened to 200 episodes, how many more episodes than you would they have
200.
listened to? Still want some
200.
think time?
Haven't listened to one. Not once. Not even tempted.
Love it.
Well, listen
Love
when
it.
you're in them.
And my kids obviously listen to the beginning because they still talk about the fact that there was, oh God, now I forgot. Was it the strap-on dick or something like
The
that?
first
And, like,
one, the
purpose
penis
of-
Wow.
attacker or something.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still like to say to
Kai
my,
Fortune.
what did you come out with, Mum?
Which is funny because I couldn't even call it that because Spotify and that kept taking the word penis out. So I had to, put characters and stuff in. But penis isn't a rude word. Anyway,
Well,
would you like to hear a story?
When it's trapped to someone's knee, it is.
Oh, I mean,
when you're going to get
purchase.
Purchase. That's the only I can remember. Of the whole 200 episodes, that's been my contribution.
All
that
about
and
the
bag
purchase.
of dicks for dogs. And people say I haven't got a lot to offer.
No one says that. And I would refute anyone who said that. They don't know what they're talking
Yeah.
about. Do you want to hear a story?
Yes,
Love
please.
to, yes. Go on then.
Rightio. So, and I wrote this a long time ago. And I haven't had the chance to read it since then. So I'm just going to preface this with there may be points where you want me to clarify something or give you a bit more information. I will try to remember from when I did the research, but I can't guarantee that I will. But I'll do my
If
best.
not, will you make it up or will you say you don't know?
I'll probably say I don't know.
Or a combination of both?
Might come back to me afterwards, so we'll see how it goes. Now, this story was inspired by the one I did about bodies in the freezer. Do you remember that? Carla won't.
That were there
she never
freezers
remembers
in
anything.
there were
Does sound
bodies
like
in
a
the
long time
freezer?
ago.
Is that one?
Bodies in the freezer. Yeah, there were three or four stories about
yeah.
bodies found in
Yeah.
freezers all in one
Yeah,
compilation.
because there was the one who had it outside.
Yeah, and there was one that had it in his
Lived in the
spare room.
apartment.
Mm,
Yeah,
and people
weird.
stayed in the spare room and there was a body in the
Yes, and the
spare
body
room
in
the
the
whole time.
free.
Yep.
Oh, lucky they didn't go looking for ice creams in the middle of the night.
I think we said that at the time. I
Got any
think there
ice
was
cubes? No,
No.
not in there.
Why is there
Just
a
a
padlock
head-shaped
on
one.
this? No reason. It's just because I can't control myself around ice cream, so I have to padlock my freezer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not because there's a dead body in there. Yeah. All right. So I, as I said, wrote it up ages ago. So let's see how we go. Now, there are also quite a few twists and turns in this story and a timeline that is quite hard to follow. So you might want to get your pens and papers out. This
Swanee,
is the
over to
first
you.
time in all the stories that we've done or that I've done in this show that I thought I actually needed my own case board with the red, the red string.
Wow.
Yeah, because it got bigger and bigger and more involved from.
Did you get one? Did you make one?
No. I think, and I did get it right in my head in the end, but I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. I did consider it at least a whiteboard with a red marker, to try and work it out. And and I still think about that. I think at some point I might have to get a whiteboard in my office so that I can do this sort of stuff. Anywho, mind you, we're not actually investigative journalists, and I never leave the office to find out what happened. So,
What?
so I'm not really sure why I would bother having a murder board. But anyway,
I spend lots of time investigating Wikipedia.
Me too.
Oh,
And
I
on
get
that
out in the
note-
streets, out in the beat, me.
Oh, you. My sources on that note are abcnet.au, dailymail.co.uk, hauntedadelaide.blogspot.com, netk.net.au, which had a lot of content by Dr. Robert Nelson Moles, truecrimes.substack.com, adelaidenow.com.au, insidestory.org.au, a book by Tom Mann named Body in the Freezer, and I spent hours of my life watching a Foxtel production by Debbie Marshall called Debbie Marshall Investigates Frozen Lies.
Who's Debbie Marshall?
Debbie
Who's
also...
that I went to school with?
No, I don't think so.
Was she from Pauper Spit?
Deb Marshall. It does sound kind of like a name that someone you went to school with. Like it's got that
common
feel to it. Yeah. That's
Common.
the word I'm after. That's the word I was after.
Debbie also has a podcast by the same name if you're interested, but I didn't listen to
Common?
it. No, called Frozen Lies. Debbie Marshall Investigates Frozen Lies. I didn't listen to it because I was pretty much put off by the way she put the TV show together. And when I started to listen, it was much the same. However, I did read lots of Reddit threads and discussion boards where people debated the case, and someone there said the podcast had more details that were left out of the TV show, but I didn't like the TV show, so I didn't bother. So there you go.
So are we being complimentary of Debbie Marshall or not?
Not terribly. I didn't really get that as a massive compliment.
I can't remember because, as I said, I haven't reread my notes on this, but I was not a fan.
Might not be up for a Logie for this.
Okay, that was just your opportunity to say, sorry, Debbie, we actually loved what you did.
No, I was not a fan. Yeah, I might come back to that possibly, depending if I've referenced it later on. I didn't really want to give...
I've got Wiggers and you'll have Deb Marshall after you.
Well, Deb Marshall could come after me. She's much more likely to, I think.
Yeah, well, let's hope so.
Oh, thanks. But she's not actually a murderer. She's an investigative journalist.
Yeah, she probably is more danger to us.
Yes, I think so. Anyway, here we go. David Zack was 16 when he met Derrance Stevenson in 1976.
Sorry,
Derrance.
Derrance? Yeah.
Was it like where Dennis meets Terrence?
Yes, it's Derrance.
Gosh.
That's some
rough.
name.
That is rough.
Now I've forgotten everybody's names. Who's
David
Zack?
David Zack.
Mm-hmm. It's S-Z-A-C-H, Zack, yeah.
Is it fair to say that Derrance never stood a chance?
Derrance.
It is fair to say that Derrance never stood a chance.
Yeah,
David and Derrance.
I can tell.
Born in 1960, David's early life was marked by early petty crime. He'd been arrested several times in his early teens for breaking and entering and theft. And as a result of this, he was caught enough to be put into a care home and seemed to become a bit of a street kid.
Where was he?
Adelaide.
Right.
He didn't have much of a relationship with his father, Joseph, and I'm not really sure whether his mum was still around much, as he was living with his mate and his family until the housekeeper of that mate and family complained about having a third kid to look after. So around that point, they said, you can't stay here anymore. And he basically...
I love that the housekeeper's complaining.
Yeah, exactly.
You're creating more work for me.
Yeah, this is shit. Why have I got this extra teenager? So he just hung out in the streets more. So he wasn't going home. He was just sort of a street kid. When he wasn't quite 16, he 15 and 10 months or something, or 11 months, David was hanging out on Rundle Street and a guy named Gino Gambardella approached him. Gino was a chiropractor in Adelaide who had a bit of a side hustle picking up young men and delivering them to various people. David and Gino...
Delivering them to various
people.
people.
Is he a taxi driver?
Yeah. He's pre-Uber.
It's more of a grooming pedo, actually.
All right.
God.
Yeah. So they got chatting and Gino invited him for a coffee at a nearby cafe.
What's his name? Ghislaine Maxwell, should we call him?
Not far off, right? Gino Ghislaine Maxwell
Jesus.
Gambardella, yeah. So they chatted some more at the cafe, and then they wandered down to a photographer's shop where Gino picked up some photos, and then he suggested David might like to meet his interesting friend with the funny white house on Green Hill Road. David thought that sounded like a plan and went along with him. When they got there, he met Derrance Stevenson and another young lad that they called Joe, and they sat around in the lounge talking about the construction of the house. The house doesn't exist anymore, but it was a bit of I nearly said eyesore, sorry. It was probably, some people would have thought it was an eyesore, but it was a bit of a grand design, if you like. So it was single level white, and it was sort of with this roof that looked more like a ship's sail. Like it was quite
It's the Opera House.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
No, more like a circus tent shape than the Opera House is the dome.
Right.
This is more like circus tent, but I think it was meant to be like sails.
Nautical.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I believe Derrance Stevenson had designed the house himself.
Oh, good old Derrance.
Designed by Derrance.
Yes.
Designed, but if I had named Derrance, I think I'd feel capable of designing a house too. I can do anything.
So Gino took...
House of Derrance.
Well, that was the House of Derrance on Green Hill Road.
Yeah.
Gino took David to the home of Derrance, who, as it turns out, was a high-profile criminal lawyer.
Oh.
And, they had a pretty good night.
And designer.
In his spare time.
Oh, this is going to end differently than I thought. So he's a well-respected person in the community?
He was a very well-respected person.
And a pedo.
No, let's just see.
Well, it's 1976, and I'm not sure...
He's got a nice house.
I'm not sure what attitudes were like, but yes, they did involve sex. So David had sex with Gino and Derrance that night. Bear in mind, he's not 16 yet. After which Gino dropped him back at the shopping centre, and then he went home. After that, David would go to Derrance's on Saturdays and Sundays.
Sorry, can we just check the age of David and Derrance at this point? Do we know?
I was about to tell you. Well, you mean Gino.
60.
David was 15 and a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm about to tell you how old Derrance is. So David started to go over to Derrance's house on Saturdays and Sundays, and then a bit in the week, and eventually he lived with him, from what I can tell. Derrance was around 43 at the time, and knowing that a relationship with such a young man wouldn't look good, he told David to not speak of it. And he's a criminal lawyer. He will know that what he's doing is not right.
There's laws against that shit.
Interestingly, the social context of the time was that until 1975, so a year prior to this story, not only had homosexuality been illegal in Adelaide, but plenty of hate crimes had been enacted on homosexuals, including a famous case in 1972 when 3 vice detectives had gone out off duty and thrown 3 men into the Torrens River. One of the men, Dr. George Duncan, a university lecturer,
drowned.
None of the men involved were ever convicted of the crime. However, they were charged and their careers as police ended. But insufficient evidence led to the case being dismissed. Some believe the police didn't try hard to get a conviction. However, they did investigate at length. The key issue was that none of the witnesses could or would positively identify them. Hate crimes against gay men wasn't rare. The law itself providing a moral stance, and bashings and throwing men in the river, which was a frequently used beat, the river itself, happened more than on this one occasion. The then Premier, Don Dunstan, who also happened to be a homosexual, and his government reacted to the death of Dr. Duncan by calling an inquiry which, similar to the criminal case, didn't really get anywhere. But this
unlike most inquiries that are really bang on.
But this precipitated the change in the law, making South Australia, arguably one of the more conservative states of Australia at the time, the first to decriminalise homosexuality.
Right.
Also, Don Dunstan, Premier, pushing for that.
Well, that worked out well, didn't it?
It did. Also worth noting is that some of the men who were interviewed in connection to the case lost their jobs because they had basically been outed. And Don Dunstan and some of his team worked to get them employment. So by that I mean people who investigated or interviewed in the investigation of this police bashing of homosexuals were then outed as homosexuals themselves and then lost their own employment. And Don Dunstan and his government were like, let's try and find these guys some work, which they did.
You don't want gays working for you.
Then the government then's got like a whole...
Well, I think it just underlines like how incredibly
homophobic
people were.
They'll be glittering up the tea room in no time.
Well, let me tell you a bit about Don Dunstan. He
Please
was.
do. I don't know anything about Don Dunstan. I know the name, but I know nothing.
I had read a little bit about him, and he was flamboyant. He loved good food and wine, wore safari suits, and once famously wore
I
pink
like him, I
shorts
think.
in Parliament.
I think I like him.
Shorts in
Which
Parliament.
party was he with? Do we know?
I think Labor, but I'm not 100% sure. And it was under his premiership that Adelaide moved from a sleepy city of churches into a swinging scene, which is where we find ourselves in 1976. Not so much that gay men were all out and proud, but they could engage in consenting sexual activity without as much fear of reprisal.
Good on
Adelaide
him.
itself was a bit of a mecca for gay men, with many known beats existing and a
I've
lot of
never heard this.
picking
ever.
up men and boys for wild nights, just like David and Joe.
Did you guys know this?
No.
I've never heard this. Very interesting.
Rockin' Adelaide, eh?
Who knew?
Radelaide.
Radelaide. Okay, Randy Radelaide. Woo.
So, in that context, quite a lot of
Designed by
shit was
Derrance.
happening. Designed by Derrance. But a lot of shit was happening,
There's
right?
the House
So
of Derrance.
all of that was to give you context as to why Gino Gambardillo's picking up kids off the street. No one's too worried about it.
Okay.
We're having
Was
sex parties
norm.
and shit.
Yeah.
So back to David and Derrance. Derrance did take David under his wing. He helped him set up a carpet cleaning company, and whilst I don't think they lived together permanently, more on and off, they certainly spent a lot of time together. Derrance, like Don Dunstan, loved gourmet food, good wine, theatre, strip clubs, and I'm talking about with women stripping, don't ask me why, guns, he owned two, cars, specifically his red Datsun 260Z.
Disappoints you. I thought that was going to be a bit
260Z.
nicer than it.
260Z. No, at the time it was a
The
fancy
Datsun.
sports car. At
Oh,
the
okay.
time it was, yeah.
Hmm.
Not like when I had a Datsun, a 1973 Datsun, which by the time I started driving was, let's face it, a shitbox, but it got us around and we loved it. So, yeah, the 260Z, and would entertain at his home on Friday
my
night.
house.
Then he'd have these soirees. Derrance also had a passion for opal. As a criminal lawyer, he often defended miners from Cooperpedy, where he had his own interests in mining, and also was a mate of another guy named Ross Christianos. Ross is part of a well-established opal mining family who established their first mine in 1950. Ross doesn't play a huge part in this story, but notably he'd gone to Europe to sell some jewellery for Derrance. However, he got stooged, and when he returned the cheque for around $25,000, it bounced, which is about $150,000 in today's money. He also is said to have gifted Derrance a somewhat ostentatious opal ring, which we'll talk about later. And Derrance also apparently, as a criminal defence lawyer, was defending members of a local biker gang. Now, at this point, I need to say that most of the information around this case comes from testimony, in inverted commas, and I'm using that term lightly. Some might even go so far as to call it scuttlebutt and rumour.
Cuddlebutt and room.
And rumour, that's right. Double whammy. For instance, one of the coppers interviewed by Debbie Marshall made a point of saying that Derrance was part of an initiation rite into the biker gang and intimated it was some sort of sexual thing without actually saying that. Lots of, I'll leave
Do we
that to
have
your
a crime?
imagination. We will have a crime very shortly, don't worry.
Is that the bikers saying to people who want to join the biking club, you've got to do it with Derrance before?
That's what
Is
was
it really?
intimated. Yes.
No.
That is, that's how I took it. Yes. And so lots of, I'll leave that to your imagination. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. But yes, that's what I took from it. Also, the same man who looks around mid-70s was so uncomfortable with anything homosexual in nature that it did make me wonder how much had been imagined versus what was true. At any rate, I do think there is evidence that some of the members of the gang were clients of Derrance's. That's the best I can give you. So, 3 years go by.
Is clients of this is funny because clients of Derrance reminds me of like friends of Dorothy. Just another way of saying it. You're a client of Derrance.
There might be something in that, but I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't say that every client of Derrance was homosexual.
Right.
But I think quite a few might have been, put it that way. So maybe not the bikies, but I think the point of all of that is that Derrance didn't mix in the most salubrious and excellent of circles.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that mean he was a bit everywhere?
Yeah.
Despite his name.
Despite his name and despite the fact that he is very well respected as a defence attorney or a defence lawyer, he was hanging out with some rough types, one might say.
It reminds me of like sometimes when you think of like the King's Cross was like in
Yes.
that period. It's like where different worlds sort of collide because people want to
Yes.
go out and have fun and party and whatever else. And then there are people who are just, somewhat on the edge of doing what is legal or not legal or opportunistic or whatever else. And, it was footloose and fancy free. And if they feel like they've got a bit of power and a little bit of money, then sometimes those worlds can collide.
Yes.
Got
Very
it.
much. It feels like a probably lower key version of it.
Yeah, just where just the intersection of different types
Worlds.
of people,
Yeah.
but
And
having
I
something
think
in common.
if you take Adelaide as a microcosm,
Yeah.
and particularly 1976 Adelaide as a microcosm, it's surprising how connected a lot of things are
I think
in this
Perth would be
space.
the same like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3 years go by with Derrance giving these Friday soirees. And allegedly these were drug-fueled homosexual events with Gino bringing in boys and Derrance and possibly
Oh,
a bunch of
freak-offs.
others.
Drug-fueled homosexual events. What a great phrase. Like Mardi Gras.
That's the name. That's the name of the promotional
Every
company.
Friday night.
Every
Mardi
Friday
Gras.
we're
Every
doing a
Friday
Mardi
night.
Gras. Well,
Pretty much.
Drug-fueled homosexual events.
It's
So
more
hang on.
homosexual orgies, I
Drug-fueled
suppose.
homosexual
Events.
DFHE.
Yeah.
Drug-fueled homosexual event
That's the
company.
only that company. It's the only kind of event we
Is-
throw is a drug-fueled homosexual
Homosexual
one.
event. I reckon
Yeah.
60 Minutes would do an expose on drug-fueled homosexual events at
Quite
Derrance's
niche.
house.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why I wrote events, but I think I was trying to avoid saying orgies.
Oh, I love
So
it.
I think I used
Oh,
events
thank you for
instead.
protecting us.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Yeah. So
Also known as a bit of cock and bum fun.
yes,
That was
But-
what Little Britain called it.
and is it not it's not a bit of
not?
cock and bum fun? But I think the important
mine.
point is Gino is procuring boys off the street and bringing them in. And there's a suggestion that Derrance and a bunch of other similarly aged, if not older, powerful men were also at these soirees, enjoying the young men and the cock and bum fun with the young men.
And the cock and bum fun might not have been fun for the young men.
Correct.
Why is Gino the
Yeah.
only one who's bringing them off the streets?
Or maybe
'Cause
he
he's
just
good
has
at
the patois. Yeah, he's just good at it.
he's-
Yeah.
He's got the right amount of discretion.
Maybe people didn't appreciate chiropractors in the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my chiropractor is really hard to get into. They're booked out all the time. They don't have time to be going around the streets.
No, my
picking up
chiropractor
boys.
was pretty cool. We had a family chiropractor in that was the 80s, but yeah, close
Come
enough.
to Derrance's and I'll adjust your back.
Yes, I will. Yeah. I've got a swing here.
I got
anyway.
I got a probe I need to
Yeah,
to do the job.
Jesus.
Just pop your legs in these stirrups. It'll be fine. Okay.
You
got to stop
Breathe
making
in,
fun
don't
of
push.
the pedophiles. Of the pedophiles.
Not all of them were underage. I know David was.
David's
and they were
now
young men,
David's
but
now
they weren't
18 though, isn't
all-
he?
By now he is 3 years
Yeah.
later, but not initially. But I
No.
don't think every young man was necessarily underage that was
Okay.
involved in this.
Having
even
been
initially.
groomed for 3 years, David's loving it.
Mm. No, I'm pretty sure I talk about this. In fact, it's my next line. Notably, David is not invited to these soirees.
Why?
And when he was asked why by our mate Debbie, he said he felt that Derrance didn't want him shared with others because
Oh, that's quite nice.
Oh,
Nice
you're
sharing.
mine.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil you.
yuck, I just realised what you just said. And I actually do believe on some level that there was a definite affection between Derrance and David. It's also alleged that Derrance filmed some of these interactions, and some of the men involved may have held positions of authority, as I said. But either way, it was still not socially acceptable to be gay in mainstream society. And some of the men could well have been married to women, and so keeping their sexuality a secret would have been extremely important to them. I don't think there's evidence of Derrance blackmailing people, and none of the alleged films have surfaced. But the idea of Derrance making gay porn is a prevailing thread in articles and research I've read.
Scuttlebutt or rumour? Or
I told
fact?
you. Testimony, otherwise known as
Yeah.
scuttlebutt and rumour.
Yeah. I was just trying to work out if you felt that was which category you'd put that into.
It's an interesting. There's no evidence, so I'll put it into scuttlebutt and rumour. But it's an interesting theory. Yeah, he definitely had a nice camera, and he was definitely into photography.
Well, it's not like he would have been doing it on his iPhone back in the day, is it? He would have had to have a
He
little.
had one of those
Little recorder,
yeah, the little
or a
ones,
camera,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Well,
I can't
Gino
remember.
had a photographer.
Not a
sorry,
brownie.
Friend who was a
Didn't he
photographer.
have
He
a
went to
friend,
the, he went no he
the
went to the
film-
photo shop. He went to
That's it, yeah.
remember the old days when you used to have film
Yeah.
to
Oh
develop?
yeah.
He was picking
Yeah.
up photos from one of those places.
You'd need
Yeah.
someone in the club to do the developing.
You might, yes,
True.
you might. Okay, so By 1979, Derrance had run into some financial difficulties
Mm.
and had dipped into a client's account, otherwise known as fraud, to offset his issues. Now, again, this is only referenced in the Debbie Marshall investigation, but overall it paints a picture of Derrance flying a bit close to the sun. He's got his fingers in opal mining, he's diddling young men on the reg, he's defending undesirables, he's committing low-level fraud, doing and dealing drugs, he's possibly making illegal porn, blackmailing people, and generally being a very naughty boy.
He's got it all going on.
To be honest, it sounds like a modern, man of this age. Like young
some
people
degree.
who are on the it sound all that different. The only thing is that there'd be a stigma associated with him being gay. That's about it. If it came out, that's the thing that
Yeah,
people
but
would have
I
the
would have
biggest
thought-
issue with.
Also with the legal fraternity, I would have thought
I would hope so.
some
Yeah.
would raise an eyebrow to this, yeah.
You would
On
hope.
top of all of that, he's not exactly keeping a low profile. He had this silly-looking house that he built, and even by the standards of the 70s, this thing was frankly ugly. It looked like a collapsed tent, as I said, or a boat, single level on a triangular block. The house was a standout Frank Lloyd Wright sort of design, and people definitely noticed it and seemed also to be interested in the comings and goings of the house. Derrance's office was at the back of the house, the widest part of
Gosh,
the
it
house.
is ugly.
Yeah, it's
She
great.
used to show me a picture of the house.
All
Yeah.
right, let me have a
Yeah.
look.
And it had, so he's got the office at the rear and it has a door going adjoining straight into the living quarters. And I believe one of his employees worked out of the office with him as well. So the adjoining door to the rest of the house was lockable to separate the two, although I believe it was very rarely locked. You've seen the house now?
No. Derrance, what will I look at? Adelaide, Derrance somebody.
Derrance Stevenson, White House.
House. Shit house.
So,
It's the original shit house.
I think it's just trying to be flamboyant. It's gone now. It's been knocked down. So what of David? According to David,
What of David?
in this whole period, what's going on with him? According to him, he was flattered by the attentions of a well-spoken, high-flying criminal lawyer. He enjoyed the lifestyle Derrance had, often wearing Derrance's clothes. His lovely shirts were monogrammed, and they had, by coincidence, the same initials. Whilst he
Oh,
maintains
dear.
that
That's
he did
nice.
not engage in any relationships with anyone other than Derrance at the time, he was aware of Derrance regularly sleeping with other people. Quoting David directly from Tom Mann's book,
where was David living at this point? Was he living at
on
Derrance?
and off at Derrance's.
Oh.
And I think possibly stopping at his own parents' place at some
okay.
point, but he's on and off with Derrance, yeah.
Yeah.
And he spent, we'll get onto it, but he spent a bit of time up in Cooper Pedy as well. Quoting David directly from Tom Mann's book, I knew that Derrance had other friends from time to time. Firstly, because sometimes when I came home, I found him in the bedroom with another man. That might be a bit of a giveaway. And sometimes he would tell me about it. There was never an argument between us about this, but I didn't like Gino deliberately bringing men around. He also had the habit, which I did not like, of afterwards talking to Derrance when I was there and making comparisons between me and the persons whom he had brought around. On these occasions, Derrance used to stand up for me. Gino's a bit of a twat and a pedo.
Unlike Derrance.
Derrance is a bit of a dick too, but yeah. After David gave up his plumbing apprenticeship, Derrance helped him out with the carpet cleaning business and also got him involved with the opal mining. He said he'd seen it in a vision. Allegedly, Derrance was a psychic, that David would be on opal, which means find opal. So he sent him up to Cooper Pedy, and David spent months there learning the trade of opal mining, calling Derrance 3 times a week. Derrance went up there in early 1979, and David had used some checks that bounced, and Derrance spoke to the police to explain that he had to pay tax or something, and so he didn't have sufficient funds. Anyway, David's mum paid the debt, and Derrance said he'd pay her back. David spent 3 months working in a mine in Cooper Pedy and returned to Adelaide in May, just before his birthday. He resumed his relationship with Derrance, but planned to return to the mine by bus on the 4th of June. Derrance was to go up a week or so later to attend to business there and had asked David to go and keep an eye on Ross, Christian, whatever I said his name was, mentioned earlier as the guy with the failed jewellery sale, and to let Derrance know if he found any opal, because then he'd have cash to make good on the sour jewellery deal. Derrance is out of pocket $25,000 of the time because idiot Ross went overseas and said, I'll sell this opal for you, got a shitty check, brought it back and it bounced. So he's out of pocket. On the Thursday, the week before his trip back to Cooper Pedy, David spent some time with his mum, who was unwell at the time. She took David off for a haircut, and he talked then to the hairdresser about going back up to the mine. Derrance spent Friday at court with Kathy Branson, a lawyer who was working on an unrelated matter involving Gino Gambardella. On Saturday, Derrance and David were at the house, as in the White House,
And then they went to an art gallery with Gino that afternoon. Then they went to Derrance's offices and then out to dinner. David recalled that they got back from dinner late, about 2 a.m., and Derrance was on the phone. In his statement, he describes this. Derrance was talking on the phone for some time. After he put the phone down, he sat down in the living room and he began to cry. And between sobbing, he was saying, "I want to get out. I want to get out." I comforted him and said, "It'll be all right." I didn't know what he was referring to, and I didn't ask. If he wanted me to know something, he would always tell me. The only other thing that happened on the Saturday that I can remember that I think was of importance was that he had been talking about my going back to Cooper Pedy, and Derrance had said, "I have a psychic flash that Ross Christianus is on Opal."
What?
On Opal means that he's found a stream of Opal. So he's had a
Right.
psychic flash that Ross has found Opal.
Right.
So on the Sunday, David went and got his ticket to Cooper Pedy. He was to leave on Monday, I think. Then they went to a friend of Derrance's and they spent the afternoon with the friend, with Derrance napping on the couch with his head in David's lap. On Monday, the 4th of June, Derrance went to work. He came back and he worked from his office where Mrs. Flaherty worked with him. He was working and going in and out of the house and nothing was amiss. He gets a call from Mark Lawrence, a client, and according to some people, possibly a lover of Derrance's. At around 5 to 5:15, a Ms. Trust calls and talks to Derrance. Not Liz. No, that's Liz Trust. So this woman rings up and calls to Derrance. These are important because these are times that someone says, "Oh, yeah, I called him between 5:15. So we're now, to your point, Swanee, where's the crime? Establishing a timeline.
Right.
Now, David on the same day slept late, getting up at about 2:30 when Derrance got back from work. Derrance was going between the office and the house and at one point showed David a piece of uncut opal, saying David should get it cut
Uncut gem.
and they'd go halves as a birthday present. Apparently, it was quite valuable, and Derrance thought it would be a good thing for them to buy some opal cutting equipment as Derrance was aiming to get more into the mining. He and Derrance, David and Derrance, had afternoon tea at around 4:30, tea and fruitcake, and David went out to get bread and or milk at about 5 p.m. He recalls returning to the house at around 5:30 p.m. A witness who knew Derrance through work said she saw the Datsun at 5:15 being driven by someone other than Derrance. Now, I've got to say, I found the lack of court transcripts extremely frustrating, as in not publicly available. Dr. Moles has some edited on his website, but without all of them, it's hard to work out what's going on. But the defense address talks about a Mr. Jackson who went to the house looking for Derrance at around 6:45. He knocked on the
Michael?
door, got no answer, and then he left. Apparently, and that wasn't unusual because Derrance had clients, in inverted commas, showing up all the time out of normal hours because, as I said earlier, he represented some shady characters.
I thought you were meaning the rumpy pumpy.
No, these are real clients, but they're showing up at, whatever hours suits them. Now, this is where the whole thing becomes about timelines and witness
I
reliability.
just check what year is this? 1979.
1979.
Do you know it's 46 years ago today?
I did not. How
Jeepers.
about that?
I know.
That's spooky.
It is a bit.
200 I did it again. 200 episode celebration.
And you got it on the dot.
On the dot. That was
What a coinkydink.
Deirdre Chambers.
That's totally excellent. Okay. What a coincidence. That's right. This is, according to David, Derrance got a call from Gino Gambadello at around 6 p.m. Gino also provided this in a statement to police. So he said the same thing. Gino says he was inviting Derrance to his wife's birthday dinner that night and to be there at 7:30. I find it weird that he was at an art gallery with Derrance on Saturday, and you'd think that a birthday dinner would have been arranged and Derrance, as a close friend of Gino's, would have been invited before 6 p.m. on the night of the dinner. Don't you think that's a bit odd?
Yes.
I mean, yes.
Pull that out right now. Anyway, according to David, Derrance got off that call and told him to go to Cooper Pedy immediately. He gave him a cash check that he had, and he told him to go get a refund on the bus ticket, take his car, and drive straight to Cooper Pedy. David did as he was told, but he did think it all seemed a bit weird. Derrance drove that fancy red Datsun 260Z sports car with a red Joe Gun 045, which some said he'd never let anyone else drive. But there were two witnesses who said they'd seen David drive it before. So on one hand, you had supposition that he wouldn't let anyone drive it, and two people who said that they'd seen him drive it at least 2 times before the 4th of June. So David had driven that car on occasion. So David left the house after the phone call, probably about 6:15ish, and drove to the bus station where he had to hang around a bit to get the refund. The man at the station said he thought David was there at 7 p.m. as the bus was due to leave at 7:15 and another person was trying to get a ticket and the other teller was telling him to wait, presumably whilst David's was cancelled, which is very confusing because it suggests that Derrance said, just take my car and leave right this second. Go to the bus station, cancel your bus ticket for a bus that was due to leave in half an hour. So I find it a bit weird, to the point where I think maybe the whole thing about why the driver remembered the time is the weird bit for me, because I'm not sure that David was intending to leave to go to Coober Pedy that moment. I'm not convinced. David then left the station and drove to his parents' house, which, depending on traffic, would take between 20 and 30 minutes, arriving, according to him, at 7 p.m. So David says he's left the bus station at 6:30.
The real takeaway for me from that is that in 1979 in Adelaide, traffic could delay you by 10 minutes. I mean, that sounds crazy to me too.
Not even delay you, it's just how long it took to get somewhere. Yeah,
I just don't think there were that many cars in Adelaide then.
agreed.
Hmm.
So his father recalled him coming in just as the Channel 7 News was finishing up with the weather report, which would correspond with David's account of it being 7 p.m. According to his father, he was wearing a check sports jacket, light open neck shirt, grey coloured trousers and boots. He hung out with his dad for about 10 minutes whilst having a dart and then made a phone call. As it turns out, he was calling Derrance, but he didn't get onto him. He then went to see his brother, who was in the garage with his girlfriend, Julie Harris. Julie was 15 at the time and recalled she'd been halfway through watching the Brady Bunch when David walked in, which would make it about 7:15. David then gave them a lift at around 7:40 to a shopping centre because he had Derrance's car. After dropping them off, he went back to Derrance's place because he still wasn't 100% sure what was going on. But Derrance wasn't there, so he tidied up the cake plates and the teacups, cleared an ashtray before leaving for Coober Pedy at about 8:30 p.m. Now, facing onto Derrance's car park was the office of Sampson and Company. Rodney Shields had gone back to do some work at around 8:40 p.m. that night and recalled seeing a Ford XT station wagon pull up 5 minutes later, so 8:45, one which looked an awful lot like Gino Gambadello's car and which Rodney identified later as being Gino's. He said he saw it parked next to Derrance's car, though in fairness, he didn't actually look closely at the Datsun, even though he was a bit of a car nut. He thought it must have been Derrance's car, as if it wasn't, he'd have noticed that. However, it could have been a low-slung car. At this point, it's night time, so I'm not even sure the colour was that evident. Rodney reckoned that the Ford and the other car were in the car park until 11 p.m. Now, Keith Swalling, a local cabbie, got a call to the house at 11:07 p.m. and picked up a young man with blonde hair and a pale, sallow complexion. The guy was wearing brown framed glasses and was well dressed, possibly in a suit. He was carrying an attaché case and a green garbage bag. He dropped him off at Rundle Mall in the city at 12 minutes past 11. So it's a 5-minute drive. Definitely walkable distance. The guy got out and left the case and bag on the back seat of the cab. So Keith called him back, and as he handed the stuff over to the guy, he allegedly said, "This is the most important part. The rubbish bag is believed to have been dumped in a bin and taken to the dump, but it was never recovered."
That's not how you treat important parts.
Well, we don't know what those parts were.
What was in it?
We don't know.
They're important.
How do we know anything was in it?
It was the most important part, but we don't know what was in it. So,
Maybe it was the penis.
No, it wasn't. Well, it
You
might have
don't
been a
know.
penis, but it's not a penis of anyone I'm talking about.
How do we? I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves here, people. What's going on?
It'll all become clear
It's
in a
a
moment.
lot to follow, isn't it? This is where you need the
It could have been the rubbish.
board.
It could have been the rubbish. Well, why would you take a bag of rubbish in the back of a cab for 5 minutes to go to Rundle Mall and then put it in a random bin?
Why
in
would
the
you go to
mall?
Rundle Mall?
More importantly,
question.
why would you do a true crime podcast on somebody catching a cab to put the rubbish out?
True that. So David,
It's
whilst
a
all
test
this
this
is happening-
episode to see if anyone really
It
is.
is,
it is a bit.
is.
And
It
that,
is a
my
bit.
friends, is the
Oh,
story.
it really is. It really is. I'm going to get
That's
onto the
right.
maths in a second. You'll be. Here we go. Ready?
Gosh.
Yep.
Here's the maths. So David's off to Coober Pedy, saying he hit the road at 8:30. It's a bloody long way. At night, in a sports car in 1979. I've heard people say it's a 5.5 or 10.5 hour journey. We do know that David had engine trouble and that he got bogged on the way. So my joke about the maths is if you are travelling in a Datsun 260Z to Cooper Pedy and get bogged, and if you start at 8:30, what is the time that you might reasonably expect to get to Cooper Pedy?
That was
If
an
you are
HSC
doing
question last year, wasn't it?
an average of blah blah kilometres per
I
hour,
think
and you laugh, but that is an important part of this case. Is how
I
long it
think
might take them to
importantly
get to Cooper
that
Pedy.
it's red as well shaves probably an hour off that journey because the red ones go faster.
Very,
Yeah.
very good point. Yes,
I reckon
yes.
2 in the morning.
No, it takes 10 and a half hours to get there. And he
Gosh,
left
it's
at
a long
8:30 at
time.
night.
It's a
Well,
long way away.
I don't know. It takes 10 and a half.
It's like
Maybe it did
driving to
back
Sydney
then.
from Melbourne.
Well, is it just going
Well-
straight inland from Adelaide? Is that where it is? Straight up?
Straight up.
Right.
Up into the desert.
Right.
So he says that he stopped for some fuel, about $4.80, as the car was pretty full when he
Calm
left Adelaide.
down.
Yeah, but $4.80 was
What's-
probably
What do you get, like,
$25.
What's
3
that in
litres?
today's money? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
I stopped for 2.5 litres of fuel and
Can you just fill up my milk bottle with petrol?
It was probably 20 cents a litre, though.
oh,
It
yeah.
Like,
would have
you
been
know,
for sure.
It's not $2.10 like it is today. Okay, so, and then he also bought some ciggies and chewing gum from a servo in Port Wakefield. He recalled 2 female assistants working in the cafe, and he thinks it was around 10 p.m, which, if he'd left at 8:30, would be about right. He then drove to Kingoona, and the car started to play up. Some issue with the starter motor where he had to keep the key in the start position the whole
That's hard.
time. Well, it is hard. But also, I remember this one time when a friend and I were going up to Mount Beauty in the Datsun.
To band camp.
Previously
Yeah, that's
mentioned,
right.
actually, I think it was a Mazda. And there was something wrong with the ignition, and I didn't tell her to manually turn it back. So we'd accidentally left it in the turning
Start
over position. Not start, start position. And it fucked the starter motor because it kept trying to start while the engine was running. So all of the
solenoid
teeth
would be
or something
kicking
was.
in and out.
Yeah. So anyway, he says that he had to do this, and I don't really understand it. So he's, according to him, driving one hand, right? Because he's holding the
Yeah, 'cause
key
he's
in the
holding
start
the key
position.
and start.
Now, I'm not a Marissa Tomei in my cousin Vinny here, so I'll leave it to someone else to say if all of this thing about starter motors and whatever makes sense. But in my own personal experience, we smashed the car and then we were stuck in Bright until the lovely mechanic could find a spare for it. Anyway, he stops in Kingunya to get the fuel. He reckons at about 3 a.m. He rang a button and Mrs. Fox came out, charging him $2 to open up the pump. What a rip-off.
That's a
What?
bit rich, isn't
That's
it?
like
Yeah.
10 litres.
Yeah, and then he
She's
spent about
outrageous.
$10 for the fuel, which was probably a tank, right? So what did she's charging? Well, it was 3
Charge that
a.m.
up to Derrance.
It was 3 a.m. Well, I think Derrance had given him a little bit of money. I'm not sure. Then he
Well,
headed
Derrance
off.
is the only one with money.
Well, he gave him the cash check, right? But I think he might have had a small amount of change on his hand. I think I might even talk about that in a minute. He then headed off to Cooper Pedy and he got bogged. He was very tired, as he would be, and he had a sore hand from holding the key in the start position. So he had a bit of a nap. And then he had a few darts, and then he got out of the car, taking off his very nice shirt and jacket, which, as it turns out, belonged to Derrance, as he liked to wear Derrance's clothes, and he jacked up one side of the car. Then a Mr. Harrison came along in his truck and pulled him out, which was lucky. He then got
Thanks,
to Cooper.
Mr. Harrison.
Good on Mr.
You're the
Harrison.
best.
He then got to Cooper Pedy a bit after 9 a.m. So if David's version of his trip is right, it took him 12 and a half hours to get to Cooper Pedy, which, if I think back to my youth driving around rural Victoria, I tend to think it's about how long it would take a 19-year-old on really shitty roads who doesn't want to wreck his boyfriend's car, even if he does get it bogged.
Even if it's a red one?
Even if it's a red one. So he gets to Cooper Pedy and he does what he's been told. He goes and gets the uncut opal polished and valued. He hangs it around a bit, showing off that he's in this nice car. He's wearing nice clothes and he's now wearing the opal ring that Ross gave to Derrance, which various people noticed. And it was like a massive fuck-off ring. It's huge. You almost couldn't miss it, frankly. So he gives Derrance a call at about 11 a.m. and he talks to Mrs. Flaherty, who was a temp, actually, as it turns out, as Derrance's regular was off at the time. And he asked for Derrance. She said, oh, look, he's gone for court. And David asked her to leave a message letting him know that he'd made it to Cooper Pedy safe and he's doing the jobs that Derrance has asked him to. It says if he wants to contact him, he'll be at Cristiano's, but he'll call again later tonight. Mrs. Flaherty asks who the caller is, and David says, you know me, it's David Zack. Then she says, you don't know where he might be, do you, David? Because I have had a couple of calls from clients and he hasn't arrived in court. And David says, no. but I assumed he'd gone to court because his car was gone when I arrived for work, says Mrs. Flaherty. And David says, the car's all right. Derrance lent me the car. It's here with me in Cooper Pedy. So David continues on his day, right? Thinking, weird, but okay. Mrs. Flaherty, however, is increasingly concerned. She showed up at work at 9 a.m. and there's no sign of Derrance. His car's not there, so she figured he'd gone to court. She then receives calls from clients wondering where he is, and so she calls the regular secretary, Mrs. Mikowska, who told her to try to go into the living room. He might be, in the house. She tried to open the door, but it was locked, which according to Mrs. Mikowska was very odd, as it was not usually locked. Luckily, she knew where there were spare keys, so Mrs. Flaherty gets them and goes into the living room, and the heating is on in the lounge, the bedroom and the bathroom, and so's the radio. She then saw Derrance's diary and his inhaler and knew Derrance would not go anywhere without either of them. So she rang Derrance's friend Peter Way at about 12. Mr. Way thought it was weird and asked to be kept informed. When there was no further sign of Derrance, she called Peter at 3 p.m. and then he called the police. The police then showed up and started to search the property.
Who's Peter? Oh,
Peter
is the same man.
The pumpkin eater.
No, the same guy she spoke to who said
he's a friend, but I think he's another solicitor. I think he's a work connection. Okay. So the police then show up and they start searching the property. Now, I personally find all of this a bit odd. The police are on the scene after one call from Peter Way, looking for an adult who's been missing for 6 hours at this point.
Something's not right.
That feels a bit weird, doesn't it?
48 hours. Come on.
Especially in 1979, you'd be like, oh, you got to wait. Anyway.
He'd be doing a horizontal mumbo with one of the boys from the Rundle Mall, surely.
Like, there's no mobile phones. Like, he literally could be anywhere. That's partly why people took that attitude of wait 24 hours and then we'll determine if there's a problem, because he could have just decided to, I don't know, piss off, or he could have fallen down a mine shaft. Who knows, right? But the 6 hour thing, it's just very short period of time for 3 police officers to attend his house at about 3:30. From what I can. So half an hour after that call, 3 officers attend the scene. Without being able to access testimony or statements from the police with regards to how they searched the property, which is really frustrating, and in what order they saw what, it's hard to work out what happens here. But I read one account that said they'd found nothing of note and were very like the Poulton story that I told you, which was told to me by a police friend. They're about to leave at about 5 o'clock when one of the officers says, "What about that freezer?"
Goodness.
Now, on closer inspection of the freezer, it appeared it had been glued shut.
Oh, no lock, I was going to say, but yeah, right.
At 3:45 p.m., David calls Mrs. Flaherty again, so 15 minutes after the police have arrived, looking for Derrance. She said she's worried about Derrance and she asked if David knew where he could be, and David says, call his mother. He did mention he was going to go see her because his mother did the laundry, I believe, for him.
Derrance's mother.
Derrance's mother did his laundry
so she was
for him.
Okay.
Try his mum and try everyone in his telex and ring all the hospitals and the police.
His Rolodex.
It was, yes. Mrs. Flaherty told him she had called the police, to which he said, "Oh, that's good. Please find him. He's all I've got." So at around 5 p.m., the police prized open the freezer lid and found a body inside. Weirdly, also at around 5:45, old mate Gino Gambadello shows up, spoke to Mrs. Mikowska, and then made a statement to the police. Why Gino is there is strange. Also, Gino's Ford may or may not have been at the house the night before. So at 5:55, Constable Andrew Telfer from the Technical Services Branch entered Derrance's house. He saw a chest freezer located behind the door. It was pulled a bit away from the wall and was covered in black fingerprint powder. In the freezer was a male person who was clothed in a pair of brown socks, a pair of white underpants which were below his buttocks, a white shirt which was unbuttoned and pulled up near the shoulders. The body was in a fetal position with the back against the back of the freezer and the head angled down in the bottom right front corner. The right arm was above the head, obscuring his face. Blood was present on the face of the deceased, and the head was partly covered by a green plastic garbage liner and a towel.
Ooh, gross.
Dr. Manick, the forensic pathologist, arrived at 6 p.m. and noted the body in the freezer. Apparently, there was a vegetable basket above the head and 2 bags of frozen food over the buttocks and lower back. I did also read somewhere that when Dr. Manick arrived, the body was actually on the bed, as the police appeared to be trying to work out what position he'd been in. But anyway, Dr. Manick did a quick look-see, and then the body was transferred to the mortuary where he had to let it thaw out a bit because it was fully frozen.
Been there
I
for a while.
believe the freezer had been switched off at 5:45 p.m. before he arrived. And he arrived at, what did I say, what time he was there? 6 p.m. So it's only 15 minutes. It had been turned off.
Snap frozen like a pea.
So back at the mortuary, Dr. Manick confirmed the body was Derrance Stevenson and that he'd been shot in the head with a .22 caliber bullet. So back in Coober Pedy, around 6 p.m, David fronts up to the police station. He's gone there to clear up the issue of those bounced checks, i.e. pay whatever had to be paid, prove that he'd paid, that he had the receipts to show that he'd paid it all back so that there were no outstanding charges against him. And he also said to the policeman while he was there something about Derrance. You know, my friend's missing. And after sorting out the checks by showing the receipts, as I said, have you found my friend Derrance? I don't know what you're talking about, said the policeman. Derrance who? So David goes on to tell Detective Standing who Derrance is, and they're in a homosexual relationship, that Derrance means everything to him and that he's missing. The detective then gets a call from police headquarters in Adelaide. Superintendent Harvey wanted to know about where David Zack was and the Datsun at this point, because it had been reported stolen by the fucking secretary, who he had said, I have his car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure which secretary. It could have been Mikowska or the other one. And that Derrance Stevenson might have been murdered. What?
Timing.
We're good? So, Detective Standing says nothing to David about this, right? So he's now got tipped off that Derrance is dead and that the car it belongs to him and it might be nicked. So he says, perhaps if you can tell me when you last saw Derrance and the names of some of his friends, I might be able to commence inquiries to find him. David says, ring his mother, ring Gino Gambardella. He's a close friend. You must find him. He means so much to me. I love him. The rest of the
I
interview...
find it hard to believe that he would say that to a policeman necessarily.
I do too.
It
seems like a lot.
Yeah. I'm in a homosexual relationship with him. I love him. That feels a bit off to
You
me.
must find him. I love him.
Yeah, to a policeman in Coober Pedy, because they'd be so, down with it, right?
Up for the cock and bum fun.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. I'm so pleased that you're in a relationship with a much older man. That's
Must be
great to hear.
devastating. Yeah.
It was odd myself. And so I did say the rest of the interview, which I hope is taped, because otherwise I don't know how they remember the detail of this conversation. And I don't even know how they remember that last bit, right? So I don't know. I think it was definitely written down. So I've seen the transcript of this discussion. And he does seem to say he means so much to me. I love him. But also it doesn't really give you any sense of the emotional state he was in, or, if he's starting to get really worried.
It just feels a bit of
Over the top.
A public declaration in a...
Said the murderer to the policeman.
Well, not even that, just beyond rural, in a goldfields.
It's weird, I know, right? You
Police
how to get
station, it'd
yourself
be
punched up in the police station.
Yes, that's where I think
Victim
it doesn't feel like it
victim
fits
here.
with the environment. Not the sentiment so much, but the delivery in that place feels off to me.
Yeah, having watched David Zack himself, he's a bit odd though. I do wonder.
Unlike everyone else in this story who are bang on.
I said something
Rock
earlier.
solid characters.
I quoted David earlier, and he used an almost formal way of. He's got an almost formal way of speaking, and I think that, like when he said, "I'm in a homosexual relationship," he didn't say I'm a gay or So I can kind of see that happening.
Yeah,
because I can see. I don't know about the "you must find him." He means so much to me. I love him, but. And he might have said that, but it's just more that when you watch him and his mannerisms and the way he speaks, you can see that he probably did say this. But I get your point. It does seem odd. So the rest of the interview goes along the lines of why are you here, who let you have the car, what was Derrance wearing, how much money did he have to get here, did Derrance give it to you, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Bearing in mind at this point, no one has mentioned to David that Derrance is dead. Then Superintendent Harvey calls again. And there's a powwow about the check business and the car, which the secretary and Peter Way said would never have been lent to David. So he keeps asking about that, and then he asks David's whereabouts and gets the whole story from about 5:30 the day before onward. So that whole thing I talked about, he went here and he got bogged and that. So the next day, Wednesday the 6th of June 1979, a bunch of cops show up to Coober Pedy Police Station where they examine the car and they find a ton of mud, which is not surprising given he was bogged twice.
From the bogging incident.
Yeah. And 2 very, very small bloodstains on the driver's side door. They find a brown attaché case which was locked, a pair of black-rimmed glasses, a full box of Winchester 22 cartridges, and 18 loose cartridges. On the left rear seat, there were a pair of brown-rimmed glasses and a Ruger brand magazine which contained 6 cartridges. In the glove box was located an account dated the 5th of June 1979 and headed Archie's Auto and Marine Electrician, which would be fixing the car because he had it stuck in the start position, I'm guessing. So that's the day before. Now, apparently the problem with his car, turns out, had been a loss of connection to the ballast resistor, which would...
Well, yeah. That
All
makes
right.
sense.
Yep.
Wondered about that.
Incidentally, it would have slowed his progress on the journey considerably.
Oh, the balance. What was it? The ballast resistor? Yeah.
He had lost connection to the ballast resistor. I know.
Yeah,
Happens to the
that'll-
best of us.
Almost had to push it the whole way.
Other items gathered for analysis included a can of tobacco deodorant. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yep.
I just looked it up and it says here it's a 9-hour drive, and this is now.
Now, when
Yep.
you've got roads,
848 kilometres, 8 hours 54 minutes.
when you've
And
got
if you've factored in a
roads,
little bit of bogging and all the rest, yeah, all modern. So yeah, maybe it's about right.
it took him about 12 and a half, according
Mhm.
to him. That's what I think. That
I
makes
think
sense.
it's totally doable. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got tobacco deodorant and David's clothes, which had no blood on them, incidentally. The police asked David about any guns at the premises, and David confirmed there were 2 rifles, a 22 and a 308, and he said he'd been shooting with Derrance, but ages ago. They then told him that Derrance's body had been found and he'd been shot in the head. They asked, "Did you shoot Derrance Stevenson?" To which David answered, "I did not shoot Derrance Stevenson.
I'm in a homosexual relationship with him. I care very much
I
about
love
him.
him.
I love him.
I love him. I did not shoot
I care very
Derrance
much.
Stevenson."
Did you not hear me before?
Well, I told you I love him. I'm in a homosexual relationship with that man.
I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love with a wonderful guy. That's right.
It's
Who's
exactly
been
what would go down the
Shot in the head and put in
Mm.
the
Shop.
freezer. Yeah,
cop shop.
yeah. So on searching David's, or rather Derrance's clothing, they found the opal ring, some cut and uncut opals, asthma medication, and a calculator. The police said words to the effect of, "Look, we don't think he lent you the car. He's still going to tell us he lent you his clothes and gave you that ring." David said the ring was in the coat pocket with all the other gear. They asked about the blood in the car and he said, "Oh, I fucking don't know." He had a scratch on his own hand from a cat from a few days earlier, but I think it was Derrance's. But I read a pathologist saying he could have come from transfer or been there already. So those tiny little bits of blood are, especially when you think about it now, not evidence. To be honest, I'm not even sure that they could identify anything other than blood type in 1979, so chances are we'll never know if the blood belonged to David or Derrance, as that info is somewhere in the investigation files or it wasn't checked. So
I mean, particularly if they've got the same initials. It's
I'm
gonna be even
ruling the
harder.
blood at this point in time as not, it's not a
Inadmissible.
smoking gun. It's just not a smoking gun. So now at this point, I think the investigation has been on for about a week. They've got witness statements, including Gino Gambardella, who made a point of calling and giving a second statement, basically saying David had once told him a great way to disguise time of death was to freeze a body, and that Derrance had told him that he thought David would kill him multiple times, but of course stayed with him. Gino Gambardella shows up within 15 minutes of the police finding him, gives a statement, then he rings back, not asked to, and gives another statement saying, that David, one time at band camp, that David told me that, the best way to hide, what was it, the time of death was put someone in a
It's to
freezer.
freeze. Yeah.
So, a key witness that I've not yet mentioned is a man called Mr. Short, a fellow
Of
waiting
course
to
it
be
is.
picked up after work at 6:40 p.m. on the night of the 4th, who saw a guy in jeans and a jumper walking casually around Derrance's house. And when I say around, I mean around the perimeter of Derrance's house.
Okay.
Yeah. He said he was slim, possibly 16 to 19 years old, with shoulder-length blonde hair. The man had gone around the back of the house and he'd driven off in the opposite direction of the bus station, which, if that was 6:40 and we know David went to the bus station to get a refund, is pretty weird to go in the opposite direction. Also, we've got to remember, David shows up at home 20 minutes later, having gone to the bus station, had the discussion with the busman, and then driven the 20 minutes to home by 7 p.m. Also, He didn't identify the car, which if it had been a red Datsun sports car, you'd think he would have said that. David had had his hair cut. Remember I said how the mum was sick and he was hanging out with his mum and they went and got a haircut? So David had had his hair cut prior to the murder, yet the photo that the police used was an earlier one of David where he had longer hair. So when the police gave the photo to Mr. Short to identify who he thought was the person, he did point at it and go, oh, could have been him. But it was when David had longer hair. At the time of the murder, he didn't have that hair. So based on witness statements, fingerprints on the gun and freezer, 2 blood spots on the car and nothing else, David Zack was arrested for murder. The problem for David is that the witness statements used in the court case, particularly those from the service stations he went to along the way, put his timeline out by about 2 hours. Where he said he was at the first servo by 10, they said it was after 12. The second stop in Kingunya said he was there about 4:30. However, one of the buses at that stop was delivering the mail, and subsequently people have looked up the timetable, and unless something went very wrong with that service on the night, it would have been there and leaving at the time David said he was there. The lady who ran the place said she knew the time because the buses were there, but not because she looked at a clock. So the point is, all these people going, it was 3 a.m., blah, blah, they're working that out based on a routine. They're not working it out on literally looking at the time. And as I already said, and to your point, Swanee, I can't see a person travelling at night on shit roads with a car prone to bogging, breaking down, taking less than 9.5 hours to get from Adelaide to Coober Pedy. So if he left at 12, which is what people say he did, or some of this witness says he does, and he got there at 9, he did it in 9 hours with being bogged twice and breaking down.
Mhm.
The prosecution, however, using all these witness statements, sought to prove that David was lying about his timeline. And so where he was saying he couldn't have done it because he wasn't literally there, they're saying he was there. The other major piece of evidence against David was the pathologist, Dr. Manick. He had calculated the time of death between 4:25 and 8:45 using some made-up formula he thought sounded good at the time. And I could get into this more, but really you'd be pretty bored, and Swanee's already yawning. So by the end, the upshot is that his method is totally bogus. You're getting a waggy finger from Clarky, or am I getting the waggy finger?
No,
No.
Swanee is for sure. You've just been called out.
I've been
She's had
yawning.
a long day. She's very tired. So the method's totally bogus, right? The reality is that once a body is frozen, it is impossible to determine time of death, as time of death is generally ascertained using body temperature. Right?
Just like David said.
Yeah, if he said that.
Yeah.
So the time it takes a body to cool post-mortem can, depending on the circumstances, give a view as to when it happened. But once you freeze the entirety of a person, any temperature readings that would be taken would be totally off. Dr. Colin Manick got up there and said in the trial categorically that Derrance was killed in that window. And he's sort of done this kind of like, 1, 2, skip a few, make some allowance for blah. It's this window.
Yeah.
Defrosting.
Yeah. Derrance had some stomach contents, dried fruit, which could indicate that he must have died within 1 to 3 hours of eating it. Remember the fruitcake? Which would mean the time of death would be between 4:30 and 7:30. Most pathologists would say that it would be digested within 2 hours. But as Derrance was an asthmatic, it's possible his medication gave him a GRD, which would have slowed his digestion. I can't say if this is the case because Dr. Colin Manick didn't seem to test for that. To avoid defamation at this point, I'll encourage the listeners to look up South Australian cases that have been overturned due to incorrect evidence given by Dr. Colin Manick.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, apparently, David had gunshot residue on his hands. There we have it. Finally, the smoking gun. Well, not quite, because apparently that was deemed inadmissible. And though my mate Debbie Marshall mentions it, it's not used as part of the evidence in the trial due to questionable testing. We're not even sure he had gunshot residue on his hands. Also, if we remember that David drove to Coober Pedy, got bogged twice, had the presence of mind to take off Derrance's coat and shirt before getting unbogged, I find it extremely unlikely that he'd not cleaned his hands by the time they arrested him 2 days later on the 6th of June. If we're led to believe that he's the person who shot Derrance and put him in the freezer. So I think at this point, I know cliffhangering, right? I might say, this is a good time to say there's a lot more to this story. There's quite a lot more to the story, actually. So how about we come back next week for part 2? What do you think, guys?
Okay, then.
Cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. I like it.
Yeah. So on that note, as we say every week, Miss you already.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from Pixabay.com.